today's topic is going to be all about QFN chips. Let's talk about the tools. Got a pair of tweezers, and what I actually did is I bent the tip just like this to be a little bit more of a grabber, because some QFN chips, what you're going to see is they have these angled, beveled outer edges, and that makes them very difficult to grab normally. Now this board's already been worked on a little bit. This is the factory solder, which is fine. Let's talk about removal first. In this scenario, I'm using a Hakko 888D soldering iron station. I'm using an 858D hot air station with a medium nozzle tip. You can see what that looks like. It's just about as wide as the chip. Now the heat you're going to want to use to remove factory solder QFN chips is going to vary. If you can go from underneath, absolutely go from underneath. In a lot of situations you're not going to have the privilege of doing that. So here I'm going to be doing about 425 Celsius with the maximum airspeed, which will help a lot with getting the heat focused just on this area. And this board, I would say it's maybe 5 or 6 layers thick. I'm not 100% sure, but just based on the temperatures that I've been able to work with. For reference, with like a 2-layer board, I might do something like 360 or 380 with hot air, removing a QFN. Or with the Nintendo Switch, which is, I think, more than 10 layers, I'm definitely using, 450, 460 Celsius to remove the QFN chips on that guy, like the M92 power chip. So let's get this chip removed, and we'll talk about what you do with replacing. So I'm going to come in with the hot air. I'm going to circle around the top, just kind of heat up the area. I'm going to come in with my tweezers, and I'm just going to gently grab. I'm going to go in a circle a little bit closer now around the perimeter of that QFN. Okay. I'm going to lift it up slowly. Let me show you something as a reference too. Let me turn my camera down so you can see something. When I'm using my tweezers, I have my hand resting right here. I'm not freehanding. If I was like this, I'd be shaky. Rest my hand right here. I can reach it. I'm not gonna knock anything off. I have this as leverage. This is still. Okay, I've got my board on a board holder, which also helps because the board's not shifting around. My left hand is then free to come in with the hot air. I just use my left hand because I'm right-handed primarily. Sometimes I switch back and forth, but for this job, left hand hot air, right hand QFN. Now I'm going to switch over. I'm going to put my hot air away. Let's go back to the microscope. I'm going to hold my soldering iron in my right hand. I'm going to bring in some brass sponge. I'm going to clean off my tip really good. Then what I want to do, I'm going to put my iron back in the holder for a second. I'm going to bring in some flux. Now I want to add flux on the area. This is going to be a part that's going to be difficult for many the first time. If you have a practice board, definitely practice with this first, because this is a difficult part. This was difficult for me. I'm going to come in. I have my iron now in my right hand. I'm at 367 Celsius. Depending on the thickness of the board, you may want to go higher. I want to be careful of this ground plane in the center, but for now, let's just go ahead and add some solder to the center pad as well. Okay, just spread that around. Then what I want to do is I want to go over these pads with this leaded solder. Okay, it's going to mix in. The ideal is that you want to be able to go vertical to these pads. Okay. Just go over with a big ball of solder. Let me rotate this board around. So let me turn it, because the angle that you go at is important. You don't want to come at an awkward angle. It's not ergonomic for you. because you want to be able to work comfortably so you can work accurately. You want to have that ability to rest your hand, so you're also not knocking off other components. A lot of this stuff you just want it to be touch and go. You don't want to be holding your iron on it for too long, because that's a good way to rip off some pads. See how I'm just touching it and I'm going. I'm not staying on the pads for too long. I'm actually mostly not even touching the pads. I'm letting the little solder ball on my soldering iron tip do most of the touching for me. Okay. That one in the corner, I'm going to turn my tip around so my curve point can come down. Okay. Just mixing it in right now. Now I'm going to clean off my tip really well. Now I'm going to need some solder wick. And what we'll do is we're going to come in and wick all this off. Now there's a couple ways you could do this. The first way that I see a lot of people do is they just come straight in with the wick. Let's go ahead and take care of this center pad, because with the iron this will be an easiest thing to do. You might have to crank up your temperature a bit to get this center pad the way that you want it. So now this is fully saturated, so I need to trim that with some flush cutters. And you always want to have a tool on hand to trim your wick, trim wire, whatever that is. I have a little tool holder in your hand on right next to it. Let's get all this solder off this ground pad. Okay. Now that's mostly going to be fine. I don't even think I'm going to touch this again this whole time. At least I'm going to try not to. What I mean is I don't think we need to add anything else or take anything else away from this. I'm going to get this little spot over here. Buddy of mine from a repair Discord, Micromage, and he has a YouTube channel. I think he gave me some really good advice that if you see silver on the pad, that's enough. That's enough solder for that center pad. You barely need anything there. And that's gonna save you a lot of headache down the line when it comes to trying to get your chip to sit flat or make a good connection. Is just get rid of all the solder that you see on the center pad, or at least a lot of it. You're not gonna need most of it anyways. So now let's go ahead and clean this up with alcohol real quick. And then I'm going to show you the second method for cleaning up these pads, which works really well, provided that you've already replaced the solder or mixed in leaded. Oh, sorry, just dropped something. Oh well, I'll probably find it later. So the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to, we're going to wick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a strip of this, and I'm going to cut it so it looks just like this. Okay? Now I'm going to fold it in half so it looks like that. Then what I'm going to do with my tweezers, with my right hand, I'm going to hold the wick just like this. And now I'm going to come in with my hot air again. I'm actually going to lower the temperature. So let's go down to 360 Celsius. Okay. I'm going to heat up the pads. And I'm going to come in with the wick. Watch this. See that? Just cleans them right off. Just going to be careful. Just go over all these. Okay. Now I'll just do this side. And go over this little center pad one more time as well. Now you may need to get a few new pieces of wick or adjust it so that you have some clean wick at the bottom, because it's going to get saturated. Okay. That's basically all there is to it. Look at these pads are completely flat compared to these which are ridged. You could even run your tweezers over gently just to confirm that the solder is removed. So I'm going to go ahead and wick off all the solder on these side pads. Let me just show you one more thing. How I wick off the pads if I don't have hot air, and or I don't want to use the hot air, or I'm having trouble with that. Then what I'll do is I'll come in with the wick vertically, come in with the iron on top, touch and brush down towards the center. Okay? I'm doing a very gentle press. I never quite want to push, I'm just pulling very gently while heating. Okay? Sometimes I break my own rules. You just have to kind of know when it's appropriate to do that and know when to go into those gray areas. Okay? Let me show you one more thing. New things keep coming up in my head. What do you do if this happens? You're holding this down and you're trying to wick, and then your wick is stuck. Don't pull. Actually, don't even try not to move your hand at all. What you want to do, just bring your iron back in, touch it, hold it there for a few seconds, and slowly move away. That's how you're going to avoid ripping pads. If you feel your wick sticking, stop. You need to reevaluate your situation. Okay? If you feel your wick sticking, there's something else going on. Your iron's not hot enough, or your wick is it's too thick for the job. You maybe need a different wick. Maybe you need a different tip for the job. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish wicking these, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got all the pads wicked. Now we're going to focus on tinning. So let's go ahead and flux this up all the way around. This looks like a lot, but it's really not. Make sure your iron tip is really clean. I'm going to come in. I'm actually going to bring it in so the tip is oriented this way along these pins, so that way I could get the gliding motion. I want to try to avoid that center pad. If I touch it, that's okay. But you just want to make sure that you're able to touch all these pads. If you get any bridges, that's okay. You'll just want to go over it with flux and then just clean your iron tip and run over it one more time. Don't break out the wick. Just use your iron, use your flux. I promise you, you'll be successful. You don't want to bring in your wick again at this point unless you make a major mistake and you want to clean up and start all over. So now my tip is getting dirty. So let me clean off the tip. Let's try again. Okay, if your tip starts to get dirty, it's not going to work as well. So just clean it off and come at it again. Okay? That looks pretty good. We'll do this side. I've got some bridges there. That's okay. This is where that tall component is, so I just got to be a little conscientious of that. Sometimes you got to get a little creative. Look at that, I just got some on the center pad. That's okay. Let's do this. I'm going to touch that center pad. Let the wick do all the work. Let's get that little spike. There you go. I just want to show you what that process looked like. So this bridge is giving me a little difficulty, so let's add some more flux. Good. Let's turn it to the last side. The tip is dirty again, so let me clean it off. I just want to show you what this all looks like in real time, so you can get an idea of what this job actually takes. You can do it faster when you get a lot more experienced at it. I'm still not very fast at it, but that's okay. Okay. Now at this point, let's do a thorough cleaning with alcohol and a Q-tip. Okay. Let's clean it all off. You want it very clean for the next step. Okay? And if you can, what you also want to do is you want to inspect the solder on the joints to make sure there is enough on each joint. So let me take my microscope off. I can actually take it off this clip. You might need to take your board out of your holder, but I can see a little raised edge. It's a little extra there, but that's not going to matter. I can see a raised edge on each pad. Let me look at it from this angle. Oh, that's looking pretty good. So let's move on to the next step, which is putting the new chip, or if you're just reflowing, maybe the old one, back on. So go ahead and let me grab the old chip. I'm going to try to put it back the same orientation that I had it. I could see a little dot marking right here. So let's go ahead. This whole area should be clean. Let me show you the bottom of this chip really quick, just so you can see what we're working with here. It's good to know what you're working with. Okay, there's pads on the bottom. They're not always going to connect with what's on the side. Let me show you this one up close so you can see. Some of them have like a little plastic divider between. This one, I think, it looks like the pad goes all the way around the corner. So we'll have pretty good heat conductivity here. But there's going to be a lot of situations where there's a little black plastic lip, and you're not going to be able to tell if it's fully connected just from looking at the top. So you got to be careful, because it can be a little deceiving. So let's go ahead and do a rough alignment just with our fingers. Okay, it doesn't have to be exact. Now I'm going to come in, I'm going to kind of grab it with my tweezers and use my finger at the same time. I'm going to do a rough alignment. Doesn't have to be perfect, but good enough. And once you've got it kind of where you want it, You want to be pressing down with your left finger just a little bit to make sure it's as flat against the board as it can be. It's not going to get flat because the solder underneath. Now with my hot air at the same temperature as before, 360, which I changed it to for the wicking, I'm going to come down on top. I'm going to heat the area for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'll let go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I saw the solder change, but I'm going to count to 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I'm going to release my tweezers carefully. This is not solid in place yet, okay? All we've done is we've tacked it down. We've taken the little solder that's sticking up and we've tacked it down. Now we want to come in, flux around the side. Okay? Be gentle because the chip might be barely attached. So flux around the side. Now, I'm going to lower my airspeed just a little bit to maybe about 80 or 90. I'm going to come down straight on top from a distance. Okay? I'm going to slowly come in. Circles, slowly come in. Watch the chip. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Release. Wait for the solder to cool. If you notice, none of these other components really turned molten when I did that. We should be solid now, but we're not done yet. Now at this point your chip might not be perfectly aligned. What you might do is you might turn your airspeed up back to 100%. You're going to come in again, and what I'll do is I'm going to rest my tweezers right here next to the chip so I'm not free floating. But you can give the chip a little nudge, and sometimes that will be enough to kind of kick it into place because liquid tension will come into play. Let's see if I could show you what that looks like. I'm going to come in from the bottom. And if it's not kicking in like you're expecting it to, now my alignment's off. But this is a good demonstration piece. Oops. Now it's really off. That's okay. So what if your chip looks like this, where you didn't get the alignment quite right, or it moved when you were doing that process? Well, check this out. Let's heat it up. I just added a lot more flux. Okay. Let's slowly get this into place. I'm keeping that hot air moving in a circle. Did you see that? Did you see that movement? It just pulled itself right into place when it was close enough. Let's release the hot air. I see a bridge here at the bottom, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that until the end. Wait for it to cool. When you see most of the joints are cooled, I'm going to gently press on the center. Now, depending on your board holder, I'm seeing I'm going to need some more reinforcement on the right side. I have a little magnet holder, so I'm just moving a magnet over. So now let me press gently. I'm going to heat it up one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're almost there. Now this is where you can come in with your iron. You can just touch up any bridging points. I see this little bridge here. I'm just using the tip. Look at that. Because we're leveraging that the board is still hot from the hot air. while we can, let's go ahead and take our scope and get in there. If there are any other bridges that we're missing, we can go in and touch them up, but I think we're all set. Okay. Now there are some other things, like if you are still experiencing bridging and you're having a hard time getting the bridges out with just your iron and flux, what I might recommend is Flux, come in with a clean iron tip, and then introduce some hot air while you're going back and forth along the side of the chip. You don't want to press down super hard, because then what you're going to start to do is cut into the solder mask, and you're going to actually make your job a lot harder. So sometimes just hot air along with the iron is enough. All these joints look awesome. So that's going to be it for this one. It's a little bit about QFNs and kind of what I've learned over this past 8 months or so, and I hope I can pass that knowledge on to you. I hope this is useful to you when you're dealing with QFN chips. They are not fun. I hope you learned something new. If you have any questions, feel free to join the Discord if this was useful to you. I'd love to see what you're working on and your successes. So contact information is in the description. If you want to reach out, feel free. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.